services identity that got formalized
Welcome to the Daily Glasgow Cappuccino. Start each day of COP26 by drinking in a few minutes of warm, stimulating conversation about climate resilience. I'm your host, Peter Willis from The Resilience Shift. Shall we begin? My guest on this morning's cappuccino is Professor Johan Rockström. Johan has been the joint director of the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research in Germany since 2018. Prior to that, he founded and directed the Stockholm Resilience Centre at Stockholm University and was director of the Stockholm Environment Centre. He is particularly well known for having developed the Planetary Boundaries framework for scientifically establishing the safe operating space for humanity. Johan is a highly effective and well-known speaker on the climate emergency. So thank you and welcome, Johan, to today's Cappuccino. Very glad to have you with us. I and the Resilience Shift work with a lot of leaders who are grappling with the challenge of climate change from a leadership perspective. What is it that you most want to land in the minds of leaders right now, at this moment in time, around the idea of resilience?
I think there are two dimensions that I think we urgently need to have a much deeper insight around. I mean, the number one is, of course, that there is no safe landing at 1.5 degrees Celsius, meaning delivering on the Paris Climate Agreement only by engineering-wise phasing out fossil fuels, which is our prime focus in all the climate negotiations. It is equally important. In fact, it is a prerequisite to have any chance of success that we sustain and safeguard the resilience in the Earth system, which means all the carbon sinks and all the carbon flows and the functioning of the living biosphere. We know, for example, in our latest analysis that if it hadn't been for the resilience in the Earth system, even just on terrestrial ecosystems on land, meaning soils and wetlands and rainforests and temperate forests, we would have passed through 1.5 degrees Celsius already today. So we have resilience in the Earth system to thank for the stability up till today. But we also know that all the climate models in the IPCC that gives us a remaining global carbon budget of roughly 400 or 500 billion tons of carbon dioxide, which enables us to have potentially a soft landing of phasing out fossil fuels by net zero world economy by 2050. All of that relies entirely on the assumption that the resilience in the planet will continue. There is no silver bullet to solve the climate crisis. There's no linear solution. We need diversity, redundancy, which are elements of resilience. We talk often of, for example, just electrifying the whole world economy as being this leap from oil to electricity. Well, of course, that may be the ultimate outcome in 1 generation, 2 generations, but the pathway to get there will require resilience thinking, meaning investing in multiple options, complex interactions, failures and success, learning by doing, all these factors that we include when we define resilience as the ability to live and develop with change, to be adaptive and flexible.
I find that fascinating, the way you described particularly that first point about the resilience in the global ecosystem, providing us the basis on which to do this transition into a zero carbon economy. And it strikes me how much the resilience debate and discourse is carried on in a sort of urban-centric, business-centric way. And I don't hear much in that discourse about the Earth systems that you're describing there. For a lot of businesses and corporations, and maybe even governments, the idea of resilience is around making your organization or your city resilient to climate shocks. And you're addressing it from a level underneath that.
One of the dire mistakes we're making, where we are kind of interpreting resilience as only being our ability to cope with shocks, meaning basically build walls against extreme events, droughts, floods, heat waves, fires, all forms of extremes originating from environmental change. So we have this paradox that we humans are the drivers. We are powering up the Earth system to hit back with very hard extreme events. And we're powering up with more energy through global warming. It's not only about reducing the pressure on the Earth system, it's also recognizing that there's something in between. There's this buffering capacity, nature's ability to be our best friends in helping us to navigate this pressure. So it's not only that we need to reduce the stress levels, we also need to be stewards. We need to manage and govern the capacity of all the living components in the Earth system to continue helping us in dampen and reducing the impact of the extremes that we are ourselves causing. For example, at the Glasgow climate negotiations, to see this as the first nature COP, the moment when we factor in and build into our policy discussions, not only decarbonizing the global energy systems, but also keeping the resilience in our living biosphere intact. And that this is my biggest worry, actually, that we are not only moving in the wrong direction on fossil fuel emissions, not having bent the global curve yet, but we're also losing resilience in the living biosphere. I mean, just look at what's happening with the Amazon rainforest, look at the tropical coral reef systems, look at overfishing in the oceans, which leads to a degradation of the whole food web. Just look at what's happening on our cryosphere systems. All of the living biosphere systems that help us as long as they are resilient, but can self-amplify global warming if they cross thresholds and lose resilience. So it's not kind of a linear journey upwards or downwards. It can be non-linear when systems flip over from one state to another. So there's more into it than just a tool for dampening. It's also the risk of self-amplifying if we cross tipping points. So we are today driving the negative trajectories by burning fossil fuels. But we cannot exclude that the planet takes over and becomes itself the self-emitter of greenhouse gases. And that moment, we lose control. And that would be the moment when we shift from a resilient Earth system to a non-resilient Earth system.
Yes, you're making me realize that this is an extremely uncommon, I would say probably a unique thinking challenge for Homo sapiens. We don't have any genetic coding for thinking about what you've just described there. But I just want to end, if I may, by coming to this word we, which you've used a lot. It's very easy these days to refer to humanity and to we as though we are capable of acting as a single organism. How are we doing in your perspective?
Well, we're not doing very well, unfortunately. I mean, that should be recognized at the outset, that we established the United Nations as we, rebuilt after the Second World War, and recognizing the need for universal, fundamental human rights, clear codes of conduct between all nations in the world. And now, 70 years later, when we need trust and universal principles for collaboration across all human beings on Earth, we are unfortunately at an all-time low in our ability to do so. When the United Nations Environment Programme was born in 1972 after the Stockholm Conference, and today, we have a Paris Agreement that is legally binding at the upper floor, but is all voluntary when it comes to what nations are supposed to do. So basically, we've gone one step backwards from the Kyoto Protocol, even from 1997. Now, is there any light in the tunnel in that, let's call it quite messy world that we live in today? And I would argue that the answer is yes. COVID-19 and the pandemic proved that we are able to rise as one community across all nations in the world in the face of an immediate crisis. Understanding of interconnectedness, I think, is actually in an all-time high in a situation where our governance capacity is weak. And that is positive in the sense that it shows that there is kind of a direction of travel of trying to find more common universal ground. All these things are starting to sink in, and people don't talk of it of resilience perhaps, but it is actually articulations of concern over the resilience of the planet. And I do foresee that this hopefully is a moment of an honest discussion of our failures so far, and the need to really strengthen global governance and to hand over some power to more democratic but also global governance institutions. And I think the only way for us to have any chance of keeping thriving biomes on planet Earth is that we plug them into a global commons governance regime for resilience, which would allow new mechanisms for financial compensation for those nations that are stewards of these critical biomes for the resilience that would benefit all of us. And that we don't have that mechanism today, but I think we need to develop it very rapidly.
On that inspiring note, Johan, I want to thank you most warmly, and I want to thank you for everything you're doing in the world. All power to your elbow, you and your colleagues.
Thanks for this very rich conversation. Thanks.
Lots of people didn't have access to land, amenities, services, identity that got formalized.
doing? You're doing something live in the mornings.
Just wait for them to. Okay. So welcome, Joe Da Silva. Really great to welcome you to the Resilience Hub. Thank you for coming along this morning. Is it your first day arriving here at COP?
No, I arrived on Monday.
Okay. And how many COPs have you been to before? You must have been to quite a few, I expect.
No, I've not been to COPs before.
Oh, gosh.
Because typically they haven't allowed business into COPs.
Okay.
So it's. Hang on 1 second. Sorry, is this live or
Yes.
not? At the moment, is this live or it continues?
Yes, it's live. So coming to COP for the first time, so far, is it everything that you expected it would be? Is it as exciting as you thought it would be? Is it as chaotic as you thought it would be?
I've been to many of these global events, whether it's Habitat 3 or the GFDRR Forum on an annual basis. You know, these events are very important because they're an opportunity for people to feel like whole world citizens. You know, I personally, for the last year or so during lockdown, have been stuck in North London, whilst my work for the last 15 years has been primarily in Africa or Asia or Latin America. And, you know, I've missed a whole part of the world. And if we're going to tackle climate change, we need to feel part of one human race that is occupying this planet and collectively tackling the big problem of climate change. So it's fundamentally important to be here, and I think it's wonderful that so many people have travelled so far to get here.
And I think that's one of the big things for the Resilience Hub, is that we're very keen that we are engaging with communities from around the world. So as well as from Glasgow, there are 5 other hubs around the world with organisations and partners producing events that are then being live streamed over the platform. So from the Pacific, from Asia, from Africa. It's really exciting. We've tried very hard to have a programme that is very inclusive. Have you seen so far at COP other events where you've seen speakers that have really impressed you from either Global South or just other speakers generally talking about the issues of this year?
Well, firstly, I think it's absolutely fantastic that there is the Resilience Hub at COP. My work has been focused on resilience since about 2007, and you know, we've been a sideshow, a fringe event. You know, the reality is that climate change has been affecting communities globally for, you know, decades. It's now really affecting communities in countries like North America and Australia, you know, with bushfires, or in Europe with flooding. And so the impacts of climate change are being felt by everybody, but they are being felt the worst by those who are still in developing economies, the poorest and most marginalized in societies. And so we have a duty to address climate change by both decarbonizing and at the same time making sure that we're enhancing the resilience of communities. And so to see the Resilience Hub, these 3 organizations come together to create the Resilience Hub and to look at the program of events that is on at the Resilience Hub over this next 2 weeks is absolutely fantastic. But also, you know, walking around COP, there are other things that are fantastic. Yesterday, the Rockefeller Foundation, the IKEA Foundation, the Bezos Foundation announced an absolutely really exciting new initiative, which is the Global Alliance for Energy, where they're putting a very significant sum of money in to tackle the issue of energy access and renewable energy simultaneously. And that's just so fantastic. And this is not small amounts of money, these are not small gestures, these are big gestures supported by serious partners. And when you see that kind of commitment being made, and with the funding available, you can feel that the action will follow. And I know that program has been in gestation for some time, and it will make a difference to millions of people globally.
It's really great news. I think what's so exciting here is to see so many of our friends and partner organisations, and as you say, the 3 founding partners that have been curating the hub have been joined by over 80 organisations who've curated the programme, but also I think that involves around 140 plus organisations which are involved in terms of participants on panels and so on. So it really feels like an opportunity for action in a very collaborative way, in addition to all the kind of big statements and big investment. How else do you think we can kind of tap into this spirit of collaboration and momentum from the hub?
Well, I think, the Resilience Hub and the Race to Resilience, this is the first year, and I hope that over the course of the next year, the community globally will grow around this agenda. And I also really hope that the Resilience Hub will promote resilience, not getting lost in the word that is difficult and is difficult to translate into different languages, but to talk really openly about climate risk. We know from the latest climate models what is happening in the world. We can downscale that data so we can understand how the weather is changing, how the temperature is changing, over the near-term future, over the next 5 to 10 years. And we need to take action to mitigate those risks, and ideally to prevent those risks. That's risk management. At the same time, we need to enhance the resilience of communities, and primarily that's through their development, that's through access to infrastructure, that's through access to finance, so they can build up their strength to deal with the unexpected, because climate change is not going to play out in a neat and tidy way. So I really encourage everyone to not get lost in this word resilience. As I said, it's been my work for 15 years. It's not a helpful word, any more than sustainability was a helpful word. We have to use an English phrase, call a spade a spade. Climate change is here, it's real, the scientists understand what's happening, they're monitoring it all the time. Just like the medical profession have been monitoring the spread of COVID, the climate scientists are monitoring how our climate is changing, and we need to be agile and adapt and grow that knowledge and share that knowledge so that communities everywhere are able to take the action that's necessary for them to survive and to thrive as well.
That's a really strong call to action. Really great to hear that. Thank you. What are you looking forward most to seeing or attending at COP in the next 10 days? I mean, there's obviously a huge amount of events and programmes, things you're involved in. Are there particular things you're looking forward to, announcements or partner activities?
Well, one of the other things that's new at COP this year, which I'm excited about and very involved in, is that for the first time, cities and the built environment is on the COP agenda. Rather like resilience, it's been missing. And the reality is that cities and the built environment contribute to 40% of global emissions. And we can't do without buildings and transport networks and water systems and energy networks. And it's a very challenging part of the problem to address, because people need the built environment. It's the stage set on which life plays out. But we need to radically reduce emissions. Just as emissions have been reduced in transport systems, and just as the big scale energy transitions away from fossil fuel, we need to make sure that plays out so that every single building by 2030 is net zero operationally, and that we're also reducing the amount of materials that we're using to construct buildings. We're switching to renewable materials for buildings, for timber, and importantly, switching to a circular economy. So these, like resilience, are really critical agendas, really important, and they are, like resilience, something that really needs deep, deep collaboration between different parts of the value chain, different sectors, and different actors globally.
Great. Thank you so much, Jo De Silva, for coming to the Resilience Hub today, and we look forward to you. I know you're taking part in some of our other events later this week and next week, so we look forward to seeing more of you there. Thank you so much.
Look forward to seeing you later in the week. Thank you.
Thank you.